Welcome to the Select Star Podcast, your resource for innovative technology, developer topics, and more. Here's your host, Margot McCabe from the HarperDB team.
David, it's super exciting to have you because you're kind of our first official outside guest, at least with me as the host. So welcome and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be your first external guest for your podcast, and I'm excited to be here and things we're going to be talking about. And Happy New Year.
I know it's funny. Everyone online and everyone has been so excited for 2021 to hit, as if everything is just going to completely change and be perfect all at once. But I still think it'll be a much better year. I have high hopes for sure.
Even though it may be the extended remix of 2020, at least for a while, I do think there's, people are much more hopeful and, are looking forward to things slowly getting better.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. Very cool. All right. Well, so today we're going to be talking a bit about building web apps in Node.js, touching a little bit on Electron.js, talking about something unique that you do with drawing illustrations and cartoons, which is super fun. Before we get started, though, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey and your background. From what I know a little bit from a high level from last time we spoke, and I know you said you've been a long-time database nerd, so that was kind of one way I knew we had a few things in common. And I follow you on Twitter. I know you have some awesome dad jokes and fun, really positive content that you post on there. But why don't you share a little bit about kind of your journey and how you got to where you are, and then we can jump into some of the more developer-focused topics.
All right, sure. Well, I got my start in my career in IT, specifically like tech support, and I had some experience with programming, and that's what I really wanted to do. The tech support and the IT stuff was kind of like my opportunity to still be in technology, and so every chance that I got, I would write applications, utilities, things. Even when I was in tech support many years ago, I would try to automate things, that were boring, or when I saw that, hey, I could write an application to automate this stuff, I would do that, and it got recognized. And slowly over time, I got more and more opportunities to do some programming, and somewhere around the late 90s, I made the transition to being a full-time developer. And this was at the very beginning of the internet, right? So that was kind of the hot new thing. And that's what I jumped on, was back when Netscape was a thing and Internet Explorer was just coming out. And I started building web applications. Back then, I was doing a lot of Microsoft-based stuff, so it was classic ASP, and of course, databases. Every application, dynamic application's got to have some kind of storage or whatever. And I latched on to SQL Server back in those days. I actually used SQL Server on NetWare when it was Sybase, and Microsoft acquired Sybase and it became SQL Server. And so I had a long history with Microsoft SQL Server. And for years, I built web applications, for a number of years using classic ASP. And then when .NET came out, I jumped on and started learning C#, and built a lot of data-driven web applications over the years. And then about 7 years ago, I think, I was getting a little, feeling a little, wanting something different, wanting to try something new. And, it's one of the things I love about technology is the opportunity that you have to continue to learn and new things. And That's what keeps me excited about being a software developer. And so I jumped on, since I've been doing web development all these years. JavaScript was a language that I was familiar with, like it or not. And I thought, well, Node.js looks really interesting. I could use JavaScript on the back end as well as the front end. And that's what I started doing. I made the transition to building apps with Node.js, and I've built web applications, server side services. I've built, scalable applications. I've built lots and lots of command line utilities to automate things. And I've also built desktop apps using Electron. And also over the last 8 or 9 years, I've made the transition from being not only a software developer, but also someone who helps other software developers. I am now, over the last 7, 8 years, been a developer advocate for some startup companies and helping developers. My mantra is I want to help other developers be more awesome. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's a pretty great mantra to live by. It sounds like, yeah, I like what you touch on of that in the tech world, especially maybe more than other industries. It's flexible and you can jump around. And when you have kind of that basic understanding and basic experience in one area, you can probably shift some of those skills while being challenged and learning something new in a different area. I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, I really believe that those of us in technology are so blessed with opportunity that not only is there opportunity to learn new things all the time and stay, engaged and excited about things, but there's opportunity to move, to work from home, to move around the world, to work with so many different people, and the opportunity to work with different companies. Not that there's anything wrong with working for a single company your entire career, but
Right.
a lot of people in a lot of other professions don't have the luxury of saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm not real happy with my environment or the company that I work for, or the situation that I'm in, or I'm really, kind of feeling a little stuck in the work that I'm doing. I'd rather be doing, this other new technology or this different technology." We have the luxury that those of us in technology are is in such high demand that we can make those decisions and make those changes fairly easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not an industry where people should feel trapped, and yeah, as you said, there's nothing wrong with staying at the same company for your whole lifetime, but I think that's of course becoming less and less common. And I think it's good to jump around and to challenge yourself and try different things and be always learning, even as you said that you were learning just over this most recent holiday break, just constantly, I think, working on yourself. And I think tech is a great industry to be in. And on top of that, I've also noticed that it's such a community where people seem to be helping each other constantly, and it's really awesome. There's so many tutorials and social media platforms and tech Twitter and blogging and Reddit. You see it everywhere where people are constantly asking questions and posting their code and saying, "Hey, can you help me? What's broken here?" And it seems like for the most part, people are super encouraging and, as you said, excited to just help each other out and help each other be more awesome and learn. And I don't know if other industries have quite that strong of kind of a community where people can go find resources anywhere online. But I know that from what I've seen, I think it's so cool. And it's just, you'll be connecting with someone across the globe who's helping promote your material or something. And you're like, well, I've never even met this person. And they're just helping, spread the word. And it's been pretty awesome. I think that's one of my favorite things also about being in the industry.
Yeah. Again, I think we are so blessed with the opportunities that we have, and that's another thing that has attracted me over the years to remain in technology and software development in particular. And I'm not sure how it got started. I think it was just because the timing and at the right time when the internet, or even before the internet, were things like bulletin board systems, and people like that were geeking out about technology. They were excited to share the things that they were learning, and I think it's just the perfect storm, if you want to, for lack of better terms, of the technology that's readily available. You're the one that's geeking out about that technology, and you are leveraging technology to connect with other folks in your community and around the world. I've had the opportunity when I used to live in Nashville, Tennessee, to be involved with a local meetup, and I absolutely loved it. I loved being able to know that the things that we were doing, the speakers that we had coming in, and the workshops that we were doing were having an impact on people, and advancing their careers, and giving them, mentoring them in some cases, and I love the spirit of that. I love. That's what attracted me to getting involved in the community in the first place, and that's what I want to be able to do going forward, is to take the things that I've learned, the things that I'm learning, and share those with others. And I'm so glad to see that there's a lot of good coming out of the tech community as far as helping one another. It's not always the case, you see the bad actors that are,
There's a couple
that
trolls out there, and
yeah, there's trolls. There's people who, I don't know, they don't have a whole lot of empathy, who,
right.
might come across the wrong way. There's, plenty of folks with good intentions that may come across the wrong way. But overall, I think as people, hopefully develop the empathy for one another, that there are so many great people out there who are speaking and contributing to open source, and doing, learning programs and all kinds of things that are benefiting all of us.
Yeah, I love, I love just taking the optimistic stand, and looking at it at so positively the way you are. I mean, I think it's the way to do it. And as you said, there are always a couple bad apples here and there, but that's nothing to focus on, and shouldn't ruin anyone's day, hopefully. So I love that. I think that's a really awesome outlook. Um, well, thank you for sharing a bit about your background, and your journey. I think it's super interesting, and you have some great resources out there, and it seems like you've built a really awesome community. So excited to connect with you as well. So when you sent me a couple of the topics that you like to speak on for things like this, one of the first ones that stuck out to me was, building web apps or command line apps with Node.js, just because I know a lot of HarperDB fans can also be Node.js fans. HarperDB was actually built from the ground up in Node.js. I know our founders and some of our community really love it, and just JavaScript in general. So I think it's awesome that that's one of your favorite topics to discuss on it.
Yeah.
Also, would love to kind of hear, anything you think would be helpful for the listeners in terms of best practices, pros and cons of building in Node.js compared to other languages you've worked with, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I have grown to be a huge fan of Node.js. There's plenty of eye rolling, and people disparaging JavaScript, the language, because it was at one time pretty terrible to work with, especially if you were doing front end development and you were having to deal with cross browser compatibility, issues and everything. Before jQuery came along, it was the Wild West of coding, trying to get things to work in both Internet Explorer and Netscape, or whatever browser you may be having to wrangle with back in the day. But the language itself has made tremendous advancements in the last 5-6 years. When the ECMAScript board, when things, the people who are in charge of improving the language, finally got their act together and started to come up with this yearly cadence of adopting new language features. We've seen just a tremendous boon in the productivity of JavaScript, the usability of JavaScript. I consider JavaScript to be on par with any other language, as far as features and usability. Sure, there are still some quirks and some little gotchas and things that still exist in the language to this day, because they kind of have to be there to provide that backwards compatibility. Otherwise, if they change the language to fix some of those issues, it would break the internet, and the entire world would collapse. Because we really do depend on JavaScript for so many things. But Node.js is a kind of a unique environment where not only can you leverage JavaScript and use that knowledge that you may have for building web applications, and you can focus on one language from the back end and the front end. Node.js as an environment is very specific, that you can use the latest and greatest version of JavaScript. The coding that you want to use all the language features, and you don't have to worry about cross-browser compatibility, or you don't have to transpile down to some older version of JavaScript. You can just use the latest and greatest features and have a lot of freedom in the language to do whatever you want. And the thing that really excites me about JavaScript is that it is universal. It's everywhere. It's not just in browsers. It's on phones. It's on the desktop. You can build robots and Raspberry Pi things. You can the possibilities are really limitless. And so, for example, like creating command line applications, it's just so easy to open up and create a script and in a text editor, and maybe one thing, and automate a few steps. There's the whole npm library of modules. You can find something to help you in there that is kind of kind of overwhelming at times, but it's like the app store for JavaScript developers. You can find something in there that can do whatever it is that you're trying to do. Yeah. And you can use that as a tool to create fun things, create or automate parts of your job that you'd rather not have to do repetitively.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something I've definitely heard our team and other people touch on as well. That's one of the greatest things about the Node.js and JavaScript community as a whole, is there's just so many different tools and extensions and tutorials, and as you said, because it's such a global community, there's so many resources out there. And while it's fun to build things from scratch, a lot of times you don't have to, because as you said, it's already out there and it's already ready for you to use, and all you need to do is figure out what you need, where, and how to use it. Yeah. I think it makes everything a lot easier, and as you said, you can have more fun with it because you can focus more on the part that you actually enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's I think that's probably, I know there were a couple different reasons that our team actually chose to build a database in Node.js. A lot of people said at first, and still say now, that it seems crazy for different reasons, or they're just shocked because there aren't any other technologies that have done that. But I know, in addition to the fact that it was one of the options that our team was most comfortable coding in, it was just because of that, just because of the community and how many tools and resources and plugins are already available. I think it saved a lot of time, provided a lot of flexibility. So
yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, one of the previous Yeah, one of the previous companies that I worked with, um, no, when we started making that transition to Node.js, it opened up opportunities to um, hire talent from all around the community. That if regardless of what maybe back end technology you had used,
Mhm.
whether it be Java or .NET or Python or PHP, likely if you've built web applications, you've had to learn JavaScript, and so being able to bring together a team of people that come from all these different experiences and all these different backgrounds, that's a good thing. That's kind of that polyglot idea of you're bringing in all these ideas from different parts of the developer ecosystem that will make your team a better team. Different approaches and different patterns or architectures or whatever that you can take advantage of.
Mhm. Yeah, that's another great point. I think there's definitely plenty of positives and reasons that you see so many tutorials and resources and building an app in Node.js. Tips. Do you think that there's anything on the other side of the coin? Is there anything to watch out for, or any roadblocks that you've come across with building apps in Node.js, or maybe compared to other options, or has it been, well, from your perspective, is it mostly a positive experience, smooth sailing?
Well, for me, it's been really a positive experience, because there's so much moving forward. There's
Mhm.
um, people who are dedicated to addressing whatever platform issues are. Like for a long time, Node.js would only run on Linux, and Microsoft, you know, unlikely candidate, they sponsored the first port of Node.js to run on Windows, and from there, there's been a lot of work over the years to make sure that Node.js runs on every platform, and there are people who are really passionate about making sure that Node.js is a great experience on every platform, and that there's modules, and that the Node.js app itself continues to evolve and have great new experiences and features, such as promises and async await. Being able to natively um, support those things, and even like um, in the past you haven't been able to use like the modern ES module syntax with like the imports and exports statements like you can on the browser, and now there's support for that in Node.js, where you can have the ES module system as well as the common JS module
Mhm.
systems. There's a lot of things to take advantage of. I was thinking of what you were talking about, your company's product being built on Node.js, and I'm sure I can imagine that there are people that when they hear that they think, oh well, JavaScript is slow. There's no way that a database could perform um, like a native application, and that's one of the fallacies or myths about JavaScript and Node.js. Sure, it is a dynamic language. It is um, dynamically, it's kind of compiled in just in time. But after that initial compilation step, it is native code at that point. That you can take advantage of the work that um, Google has done for the Chrome V8 engine. So the V8 engine is the JavaScript execution engine, and they have been focusing years and years, and who knows how much investment into ensuring that the V8 engine is as optimized and fast as possible, because it has to run on the browser, it has to run on phones and
Mhm.
everywhere else. So it is very fast at compiling and executing JavaScript. So once the JavaScript is compiled and in memory, it's as fast as any other native language, any other native code. So that shouldn't scare anyone away from using a product that's built entirely in Node.js.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. I'm sure there's several other myths around JavaScript and Node.js similar to that of why people would be so surprised at first. I know for our team specifically with our database product, speed is one of the main focuses, and being fast on both read and write speeds is something we've achieved quite well. And in benchmark tests, we've been actually blowing some other similar products out of the water. So I think hopefully there's, with our product and other awesome products out there that have built on top of Node.js and other JavaScript languages, the more and more resources and tools that are out there, the more people will be open to the fact that some of these predispositions they had, or some of those old school ways of thinking, they're not true anymore, because things are always changing and improving, and there's different ways to build around maybe what some of the bumps in the road could be. So that's definitely an interesting point. Yeah. I also wanted to touch a little on Electron.js. I know you have some experience building desktop apps with Electron. Sounds like you're a fan of that one as well. I don't know as much about Electron, so I definitely was interested when I saw that you have some experience with that and just what you like about it, how it's different. Love to hear a bit on that.
Yeah. So my story with Electron is I spent years and years doing .NET development in C#, and when there came a need in the role that I was in one of my previous companies, where I needed to build some utilities for our customers, and I had been building some things using .NET, C#, and those apps would only run on Windows, and the feedback that I was getting from some of our customers is, well, that's, this solves a need, but we don't run Windows in our environment. We'll have to set up a virtual machine just to run your app or your utility, to do what we need to do. So I was building integrations between systems, and, it kind of became a pain point. So I decided I want to be able to support running on Linux and running on Mac. And my first thought was, well, our mobile team is having great success using Xamarin, building cross-platform mobile apps. And I know there's a Xamarin equivalent for desktop applications. So I want to try that. And it turned out to be a disaster. Building UIs and supporting UIs on different desktop environments like Windows and Mac and Linux. It was a terrible experience, and there was no like cross-platform way to design UIs. You had to learn each system and target those systems individually. Yeah. So after a lot of frustration, I came across Electron. I was like, wait a minute, this sounds really interesting. I can essentially build a web application, and it's hosted on a machine that makes it look like a native application. So I know how to build web apps.
Right.
Maybe I should give this a try. So Electron is essentially Node.js at the core, and it uses Chromium to render HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and all those kinds of things on the front end. And when I learned that apps like Slack, if you use Slack, the desktop app, that is an Electron application. And there's countless others now. I think the one that grabs people's attention, at least in technology, is the fact that Visual Studio Code, the editor that Microsoft put out years ago, that's now become one of the most popular editors on the planet, that is written in Electron. That's who would have thought Microsoft would use Node.js and Chromium and, these technologies, right?
Mhm.
But the Visual Studio Code, the GitHub desktop client, and so many others that are great examples of performant, well-designed applications that look identical on Mac, Linux, and Windows. It's amazing piece of technology, and
Mhm.
it's been fun to build applications. So me as a web developer, I know how to do HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and I can leverage those skills
Right.
to build better looking front ends for desktop apps. And for the most part, if you're clever with it, people will never know the difference. They will never know that what they're actually interacting with on the desktop is a web application.
Huh. That's interesting. It's kind of like you found one of those loopholes in the system, a shortcut, and um, it comes out positive on both ends. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that about Slack either. It's fun to hear about those everyday tools that you're using when you don't even know what it's comprised of or what it's built from. And I was laughing because of the panic yesterday when there was the big Slack shutdown on Monday
Oh
morning
yeah.
after the,
Yeah.
after the holiday.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
no one's immune to the occasional hiccup and issues.
yeah,
May have nothing, probably has nothing to do with Electron. You're right. It's
yeah.
operations, but everybody has those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of snafus, man, I remember the first time I dropped a table and realized, oh, that was the production database,
Oh no.
or something
Yeah,
crazy like that. It's like the worst feeling
yeah.
possible.
I'm sure everyone has a moment or more than one moment like that that just kind of scars you, and it's hard to you have
Yes.
nightmares about it. But it's as you said, it
Yeah.
happens to everyone, and I'm sure the bigger and more well known the company, the bigger a deal it is because everyone's talking about it. But yeah, of
Yeah.
course, of course, it happens. We're all human.
Right.
Cool. Well, that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing a bit about Node.js and Electron. I think those are two kind of hot topics right now. So it's always fun to hear different people's take on the pros and cons and what you can build from it. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Before we kind of move on and talk about fun facts, something unique about you. One thing I do have to ask, since you're a longtime database nerd, do you have a favorite database at the moment, or a favorite, or even outside of databases? I always like to discuss just favorite technologies, new things coming out this year, or something you discovered last year, things you're excited about.
Yeah. Well, my kind of my go-to, just because I know it so well and have used it so much over the years, is Microsoft SQL Server. A relational database. I keep going back to that because it's comfortable and easy.
Mhm.
Over the last couple of years, I have done more and more work with Postgres, and don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think there's a lot of
That's how I've most heard it.
Postgres. I don't
I
know.
always thought it was
Anyway,
Postgres.
it's as far as relational database goes, as an alternative to SQL Server in the open source community, I've been very impressed with what I've been able to do, and with the tooling around it, such for like Node.js. Like there are a couple of Node.js clients that you can use to interact with Postgres. That one of them that's newer, that's super cool and awesome. I mean, it's got this crazy string interpolation stuff where you can just basically write inline SQL code in your app, and it does all the work of parameterizing all the queries and making sure that uh, you won't have injection and tax and all that kind of stuff that you normally have to really be worried about. And there are a number of great clients available for SQL Server as well. On the document database side of things, I've I've dabbled with a number over the years. Like back in the day when I was doing a lot of .NET development, I became a huge fan of RavenDB and I did a lot of talks on RavenDB and workshops, and I was a big fan of that product for a long time. And I've used a number of others, and I think there are um, use cases for all those things.
Right.
So there's the perfect use case for relational databases. There's great use cases for document databases, graph databases, object databases. There's lots of flavors of storage that's available for data, and they all fit a need, and they all have a kind of a use case in mind for why they exist, why they were built. It's kind of, even among document databases, it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, because one document database was created to solve a very specific problem for around scalability, or around durability, or distribution, whereas another document database is really designed for being the fastest at writing to,
Right.
or as an append only type scenario. There's all kinds of scenarios, and I'm just glad to see that there are so many options available.
Yeah.
To us as a developer. Like, oh well, I can find the best solution for my case.
Right.
That's going to, and that's what makes it so interesting. When we get out and we blog about the technology that we're using, or we go and speak at conferences. Hopefully we'll be back to speaking at conferences in person again someday, or speaking virtually. It's our story. It's our reason for why we're using the technology that matters the most. It's kind of silly to bash one product over another, to say, well, this product's the best. Well, sure, it might be better at that one thing, but there's a reason why both exist, and it's not always the best. What's right for your situation might not be the right product or solution for another person.
Right. And sorry, I was muting myself while you were talking. My puppy is snoring really loud behind me. So sorry if you're wondering, it's not me snoring. But yeah, that's exactly true. And that's what I've written about in blogs. And you always see people, as you said, battling about what's the best tech stack and why this system is better than others. And in most cases, that's exactly it. I always, respond to people with that, or hope that other people will mention that you can't just post something and say, well, which is the best of this? And it's exactly what you said. It totally depends on your project, your use case, what type of data are you working with, what are your goals? That's another reason the tech industry is so fun, because there's so many different solutions and options. And I think the goal of technology providers and product companies is just enabling developers to be able to choose the best possible tool for their product. And so, yeah, I agree. It's not worth it to be bashing why one might be better than another. It's just discuss which ones would be better for different use cases and why. I think
exactly.
Some people might not care, but some people might be really interested in kind of getting down to the core technology aspects of why one is a better fit than others. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's definitely one of the funny things that people argue about on social platforms, and it's kind of funny to watch. But very cool. All right. Well, awesome. So yeah, one of the last things I was going to ask is kind of a fun fact or something unique about you, David. I know you're definitely a doodler and a pretty talented cartoonist, and that's something that you, I think, said you're having the most fun with right now, or it's kind of your best outlet at the moment. So I'd love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah. So when I was in school, I would doodle on my homework or papers or in my notebook or something like that. I never took it all that seriously. I just had fun with it. And I did take an art class when I was in high school, and that was the extent of it. And then for, years and years, the only thing I would do is maybe put a smiley face or some silly face on my kids' birthday cards or something like that. And I didn't really put any thought or consideration into art or drawing or doodling. But about 5 years ago, I was speaking at a lot of conferences and events, and I was getting a little bit burned out and feeling like I just wasn't having the impact on my audiences like I wanted to. I didn't feel like, people thought I was a good speaker. They would give me good compliments and tell me I was doing a good job and all that. But I really felt like something was missing. That people were walking away from one of my talks going, "Oh, that was good," but not really being inspired to go and do that thing I was talking about. Which, by the way, if you've ever thought about speaking and sharing things like that, there is no greater reward or one of the most precious gifts that I've received over the years has been people who come up to me and say, "Hey, that thing you talked about, I went and did that, and then here's what else I did with it." And that is like amazing
Yeah.
that I can have an impact on someone else and their, maybe part of their career or their trajectory in their career. So that's so cool. Well, I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to do more of that. I wanted to be able to inspire more people. And I came across this guy as I was trying to figure out, well, how can I be a better speaker? I was thinking about taking the year off because I was just feeling burned out.
Mhm.
And I came across this guy who was giving a presentation at Google um, on the power of hand drawn illustrations and visuals and using not art, but just simple, silly drawings like stick figures
Mhm.
and lines and arrows and drawing letters, and how much more fun and engaging that was for audiences. And it was like a light bulb aha moment for me. It was like, that's that looks like a lot of fun. And I'm sitting here watching this guy give this presentation going, wow, this is one of the most amazing presentations I've ever seen. I want to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
so I made a goal for myself. I had a brand new talk that I was going to be giving at the Orlando Code Camp on Kanban. And I thought, I'm going to draw some slides. I'm going to draw some things and I set a goal of like maybe 5 slides.
Mhm.
Well, once I got started, I couldn't stop, and
That's
I
awesome.
drew almost I drew almost every slide in that presentation, and I knew within the first 2 minutes of giving that talk that it was a game changer. People
Mhm.
were so much more engaged. They were smiling. They were laughing at my humor because I was more comfortable telling my story and you know, giving the presentation the way that I wanted to,
Right.
because I was using all my own material and not
Yeah.
having to compromise with some stock photo or bullet list of boring text. I was getting to have fun and use my own personality and humor in the
Right.
stories that I was telling. And by the end of the day, I had so many people come up to me and tell me, how much they enjoyed my presentation, and I just knew, this is what I want to do. This is this is it. I finally found, you know, this thing that I really love, and it became a hobby. It's like I didn't want to stop drawing, so I kept drawing more, and I started posting stuff on Twitter, being silly, and that became kind of my accountability partners. Like I would post something on Twitter, I'd get some laughs, and it kind of encouraged me to continue doing it and getting better. And over the years, I have gotten better. And what I've come uh, to realize, and what I try to tell other people, is that if there's something that you want to do, you can do it. Now, when you start, you're going to be terrible at it, But if you have patience and you practice, you have deliberate practice, and you forgive yourself of your mistakes and that kind of thing, then you will make progress. And, you'll be able to look back 6 months or a year later and go, wow, I can't believe how far I've come.
Mhm.
And I think that applies, it's kind of like, well, yeah, that's what we do in technology. When we learn a new technology, we're terrible at it at first, and then the more we do it, the better we get at it. That same principle applies to learning a new language, learning a musical instrument, learning to draw, learning some art or some other craft.
Mhm.
And so I try to encourage people that I've been so um, blessed by this gift of being able to draw things. I want other people to experience that too. I want you know if there's something that just really resonates with you, that you feel like, man, I wish I could do that.
Mhm.
Well, then do it.
Try, yeah,
Start somewhere, and then don't
yeah,
stop.
yeah,
You'll get frustrated, and you'll think, well, this is not for me, that I can't do it. But keep at it, keep practicing, be
yeah,
determined, and one day you'll look back and say, wow, I
yeah,
am so glad I stuck to it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm feeling super inspired. It's funny because what you're saying is, I mean, the overarching message of it's going to be hard when you try something new, but if you just keep practicing and keep doing it, it gets easier and it's super rewarding. I think that seems like it would be common sense, but I think people need reminders of that because a
Yeah.
lot of people probably assume when they try something, especially when it comes to like instruments and art, oh well, I tried a couple times, I just don't have that, like, I don't have that side of the brain, or it doesn't run in my genes or something, and I'm sure for some people it's much harder than others to do certain things, but um it's a great point you bring up of really anyone can do anything. It probably just depends how much work you want to put into it and practice and what resources and support you have, and so I think that's a really great, awesome message, and just kind of awesome high note to wrap up our conversation on. Um, and that's so cool. From what I've seen, you're super talented at the doodles and drawing, and cartoons. But as you said, even if it's just stick figures and lines and doing something, I could see that being just a really fun, more memorable, interactive way to,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
have a conversation or present or write a tutorial or do something. So you don't have to be as good at David as David is to do it. Um, but it's fun. Yeah, I definitely enjoy following you and seeing the different things that you put out. I know I saw one of the most recent one was the dad jokes, and I love those. I think that's a popular thing right now that because everyone can
Yeah,
relate. Because everyone, I think a lot of times someone might seem like they're the coolest person in the world online, but then you remember they're just a dorky dad, and it just makes people really personable, and everyone can relate. So I love that. Awesome. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all the questions I had today. This has been super super fun and inspiring, and I think you have some great tips in general for the developer community. For listeners out there, we'll put some info on David in our description of the podcast, and if you want to follow him on Twitter, it's at Reverent Geek. He also has a website, so it seems like David, you'd be a good resource and person to reach out to for, if people have questions and just want to get some tips on building web apps. And as you said, you've become also a dev advocate. So I think that's really awesome. And you built a great community, as I said. So thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. And I think this is a great way to kick off the new year. Um, and yeah,
thank
looking forward to
yeah.
staying in touch.
Thank you so much again for the opportunity. And yes, if any of your listeners out there do have questions or want to ask me anything, I am available. So please don't hesitate to ask anything about technology or drawing or whatever, and I'd be glad to help and encourage anyone.
Awesome. That's a great position to be in. So I'm sure sure everyone appreciates that. I know I definitely appreciate hearing that. So yeah, thanks again, David. Thanks everyone for listening to the Select Star podcast. Definitely tune in. We have our episodes available on all the different channels that podcasts are on, and we have some additional great speakers coming throughout the rest of this year. And if you have any requests for speakers or topics or anything, you can request that. We have that on our website, and we'll post the links as well. So thanks for listening. Thank you, David. Hope everyone has a great day, and we will chat with you next time.